I'll just turn it over a bit to Kamala Harris just a bit because if she does take over, there have been talks that she would be probably no changes on the Ukraine Russia front, maybe just as hawkish, who knows, maybe even more. But people have been saying that she might be better in the Middle East, that she might express more sympathies for the Palestinians and might
Right.
actually do something to end the conflict there. Do you think that's possible? What are your thoughts
It's,
on that?
it's possible because again, there is, a minority of Democrats, but a significant minority that is very upset about what's happening in Palestine. And so there is some pressure from the base, right, on Democratic candidates. Now you see that with Biden, though. It's just not clear that she's going to be any different from Biden. An example is that like she chose not to attend the speech that Netanyahu is going to be giving to the Congress. But Biden made the same choice. Yet they're going to meet him in private afterwards. And I think it's more of the same. It's just these gestures to show that you're concerned or whatever, or that but no change in substance. Now it's true that I think she gave one speech where maybe it was a couple of months ago, 3 months ago or something, where she did express some concern for the Palestinians or whatever. But Biden's done the same thing. And then, all in all, I think it's clear that she's very much in the Zionist camp. Now, there is a potential, again, sometimes we don't find out until people really take the reins of power. But again, she will be up against the same forces. I don't think she's going to be a particularly strong president. I was just reading recently that Obama actually wanted to tilt a little bit more towards the Palestinians during his 2 terms. And occasionally he made some gestures or whatever. But in the end, he just stayed solidly within the Zionist camp because he just found he couldn't defeat him. And he wanted to be reelected and get other legislation through, so he didn't fight him. I think we're going to find the same thing with Kamala Harris. It's not clear that she really even has any real concerns about the Palestinians. There's the occasional gesture, but again, you find that with Biden too.
It's crazy that nobody does anything for the Palestinians. That they just like the settlements in the West Bank. There's over 700,000 settlements now. Those settlers living in the West Bank illegally, and the UN and the ICG rule over and over again that these are illegal settlements and they have to leave and evacuate. And nobody does anything. They just let it keep
It's been
going.
going on and on.
And
again, there's been a lot of wringing of hands, especially in Europe. Oh, we're concerned about this, but they never do anything. And they kind of wish that it didn't happen, but in the end, they're more concerned about being accused of being anti-Semites or, running afoul of the United States and the various laws.
But if you don't enforce something like this, then you lose credibility as an institution, right? It's just like what we're seeing with things like the.
Well, it shows, it shows the absolute hollowness, really, of a lot of these European Western institutions, and of it also shows the emptiness of the promises, the falseness of their values, because again, they're doing these things. They clearly undercut these things, the values that they claim to hold dear, both in Palestine and in Ukraine. I mean, it's just like when we have some actual Nazis, then they look the other way. When we have an actual genocide, then we just we wring our hands a bit and then keep on sending them money.
Could any other country get away with that? Like any neighbor, like, well,
Probably
what's the
not,
point
no.
of what's the point of these rulings? The UN, like, if you can just, well, why aren't they enforced? Well, do they have no power to enforce them?
Well, they really
Like,
don't.
what?
Like these ICJ rulings, I wouldn't say that they're meaningless, but it comes down to sovereign nations and then even supranational organizations like the EU to actually enforce them, to impose economic sanctions, for example. But But what it does, these rulings actually just kind of give countries a license to do that. They can say we're just simply enforcing international law. It provides them with some cover. And, rather than, of course, the Israelis and others are going to scream that you're anti-Semites, but it just makes it easier for them to take some real steps. Now, it's not clear that anybody will, but it does help the, let's say, the cause of the Palestinian cause.
Mm-hmm. Who are most of these settlers? Are they mostly? They're often people that are doing the birthright claim, right? Are they?
Yeah, I think a lot of them. I know that in the past, a lot of them came from the U.S. Yeah, a very high proportion of them.
What kind of person would you have to be somebody that leaves your home in Europe or the U.S., Australia, go over there, and do they actually just? What's the process of them taking a home in the West Bank? We've both been in the West Bank, right. And we've seen these settlement camps, or
they're much more than camps. They're like
sort of settlement towns, villages, gated communities.
Yeah, like gated communities.
Or they do it even within. They'll take over within Jerusalem proper or within Hebron. Right. They'll just take over a building in Hebron, and then they get guards around it and barbed wire, and they're just in the middle.
One thing is like the army always comes to their aid. I mean, that's one thing is that the army has their back. I mean, that they know that, and if there's ever a conflict, if they gun down a Palestinian child, which they do quite regularly during the last several months, I think since October 7th, it's been I believe 125 children, or no, 250, something like that. A very high number of children have been killed in the West Bank alone. We're not talking about Gaza, of course, where it's many thousands, but in the West Bank, just children gunned down. And that's a huge increase. Yeah, it's a 250% increase over the previous period of a... but nobody pays the price. At the worst, somebody gets a slap on the wrist. Occasionally, especially when there's a lot of international attention, somebody gets arrested, maybe he's put in jail. But then when the focus shifts elsewhere, he's let out of jail like 2 weeks later. I mean, that's what happens. Everybody knows it. So they act with impunity. Now, in the West Bank and you do have these ideological settlers, and some of those are the ones that engage in direct violence and seize property and cut down olive trees and do all those horrible things. But then there are a lot of people living in the West Bank who are not particularly ideological. They're secular Jews who are just looking for cheaper housing. And that's what they find. It's often economically motivated, the moves into the West Bank. You get these gated communities, and it's actually, Israel is a fairly small country, so it's actually, not a particularly long commute to wherever you've been working. And it, it's just like moving to an American suburb.
Well, but they're subsidized as well by the Israeli government.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is why they're
that's right. There's this economic incentive, right?
I could see, if you just think about it, like if you are a young Jew living in New York, you're down on your luck, can't find a good job, you're 20 years old, and then the state of Israel says, we'll pay for your trip to come out here, your birthright, we'll do everything. And then it's a 2-week just basically sales pitch, just like when you get that, like, hey, you want to buy a timeshare? It's basically the same type of thing here. Because they take you and they show you around how great it is and how you need to, as a good Jew, to come here and bolster the state of Israel. And you're having troubles finding a good job or a home in the U.S. Nowhere you can find yourself a nice Jewish girl here, get you a nice house in the settlement with other people. It sounds enticing, especially if you're unsure of your future. It's like, I can just do this and be with my people and get a nice house and think I have a nice life.
Right.
I completely understand the appeal.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that there are a lot of cases like that, but there are also the committed zealots, who are just saying that this is Judea and Samaria, we have to be. This is the land God gave us, and we're going to take it back. That's our duty as Jews to go do that, and you find that too. That's not at all unusual.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen some crazy things while you were in the West Bank. There were nothing popping off when I was there, but some of the worst places I visited was Hebron.
Yeah, that was awful. I think that was just like a heart of darkness. So say,
like I remember going down a street in Hebron, and they have wire netting over the alleyways.
Right.
And it's because the people are living on the top. These are Jewish settlers. And they throw trash and stuff on top of the Palestinians while they're there.
Right.
Not that they throw acid. They throw acid as well. I saw kids with their skin melted because they would throw whatever. Yeah. And then, like we were saying before, they'll bring an armored car with military men. And then these little, Jewish settler kids will come out and they go in there and they take them to their school. It's crazy. And what that where they're living, that used to be a Palestinian family that lived there a year ago, 2 years ago. They literally just, this is what I'm wondering, what is the process? They just go in and kick them out. They wait till they leave. I know they use some type of legal loopholes or whatever as well. They'll try to give them some eviction notice that's saying this isn't your land. You're not even allowed to be here.
Right. Yeah, there will sometimes be a veneer of let's say legality. They'll dig back in the records and then claim to have found some problem with a deed registered in 1923 or something. I mean, it's quite seriously. If you dig long enough, you can always find some I that wasn't dotted or some T that wasn't crossed. So, quite often. Other times there isn't even a veneer of legality. I mean, how can there be for shooting down an 8-year-old kid or whatever? But, it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, and the main street of Hebron as well, people should know, you can't, if you're an Arab, you're not allowed to walk down it. They stop you, and I had to produce my passport to show that I was American. And I can walk down the street, and there are, IDF everywhere.
Right.
And the Arabs can't even walk down the main street of their own city. It's
I
wild.
remember.
And then there's a giant menorah on top as well of the hill, so every day when they look up, they can see, the menorah and like, we're coming to take your city. And they are. It's crazy.
No, I found that experience very chilling, and I'm never going to forget it. The time that I spent in Hebron. There were a lot of, very memorable experiences that I had there, but that was particularly horrifying. And I just remember having the experience after being there for, in occupied Palestine for several days. I looked up and saw, an Israeli flag, the Star of David. And I just remember experiencing this chill, this sense of horror, because I was beginning to see it the way the Palestinians see it. I knew what it meant. It meant that your persecutors, the conquering army was there in your neighborhood, and they were going to go for you next. That's what it meant.
Yeah, it was a very eye-opening trip for me as well. I wasn't going there with really. The reason I went is because my grandparents, your parents, helped fund it. I was living in China. I had no money, and I needed to do a visa run. And they offered to pay. I'm like, sure. I didn't know what to expect at all.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I left it just completely changed. After being there.
I knew. I had read things, and I understood. I was sympathetic to the Palestinians, and I believed that they had been treated very badly. But I just didn't realize how awful it was, and just the very sadism of that you see on display in places like Hebron, but in many places in the West Bank, and worst of all in Gaza. We never even got into Gaza. I think I saw it off in the distance, but we never got to Gaza.
Yeah, I did as well.
And it was already bad then. I mean, I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. We see the deliberate effort to starve Palestinians now. And many of them are starving at this point. But that goes back. I mean, that didn't start on October 8th. That goes back all the way to at least 2006 when Hamas won the election. They have been restricting, supplies, food. The Israeli officials jokingly say putting them on a diet. It's not actually to the point of death, but where they're often hungry. And depriving them of medications and all kinds of things, toys and so on and so forth, just to make their lives miserable. They had been doing that for years and years. Now it's much worse. They ratcheted it up, and the restrictions are much more severe, to the point where there are Palestinians starving to death right now. But one thing I was just thinking, like one way to measure the deaths from war is you look at excess mortality. I think the excess mortality in Gaza was already had to be higher than normal because of the restrictions that they were living under. So it's going to be from actually already a high benchmark. I think that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's just a nonstop horror story coming out of Gaza. Like like the restrictions of not being able to get any medical supplies, no anesthesia. So these people that the hospitals aren't even operating, and then what they can't operate on, we're talking about Civil War type of medicine now. There's no anesthesia, and it's on children, mostly children, that are just been shredded. I heard some reports of just Israeli snipers, shooting toddlers, Palestinian toddlers, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, snipers just for fun, pot shots, very accurate shots that had these kids. It's like, how can we? It's amazing how we can just turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah,
and everybody does.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if it does good to keep on talking about these horror stories.
Well, I think it's important to remind ourselves and everybody what's going on, because the focus really has shifted from Gaza to other, domestic issues and Ukraine and to a lesser extent. But the horror continues there. It does. The statistics, may not look quite so bad as they did before, but I think for reasons that we've discussed again, they just don't even have. The Gazan authorities just don't have the capacity to really record all the deaths that occur now because of the damage that's been done to the administrative and health infrastructure. But they continue, and you hear, every other day, another atrocity, another 25, 90 people killed, in a refugee camp or in a hospital or whatever. And it's amazing, again, how little attention it gets. And then again, we can contrast that to Ukraine. You have the, that children's hospital that was hit, and that was immediately, Russians deliberately strike. There are just no ifs, ands, buts about it. And it went on and on and on. Again, like every single hospital in Gaza has been hit, and is at least partially destroyed. Most of them are completely destroyed. And last year, the Russians fired 4,000 missiles into Ukraine. Not a single hospital was hit. Now, one hospital was hit this year. It's possible it was a Russian missile, but you're telling me that they decided after hitting all this military infrastructure and energy infrastructure, they decided, hey, let's hit a children's hospital. I don't believe it. I'm just sorry. I think it's much more likely that it was, an air defense missile. And if it was a Russian missile, it was one that was deflected. But it happens day in and day out in Gaza, and most people never even hear a thing about it. It shows it's well beyond a double standard. I mean, it's just really extreme propaganda.
Right. Yeah, and I have to also remind myself, I've only been to the West Bank, the occupied territories. Like I said, I've never been to Gaza, where that's the real bad stuff. When I was in the West Bank, it's been almost 15 years now.
Right.
Maybe not quite 13, 14. I don't remember exactly, but it was always awful back then. But it wasn't when things are popping off now. I just want to share one other story. I don't even know if I've told you. I believe we were in it was a little village outside of Bethlehem. There's a Israeli settlement not too far away, and we visited this woman, and she told us her story about when these settlers came in, broke into her house, grabbed her son, put her son up against the wall, and shot him in the head right there in her own house. And she showed me the bullet hole in her house, and she's telling us the story, and then the interpreter, she's looking at me, and she's saying, like, I tell the story, but what's the point? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm only 22 years old. I can't pay my rent. I don't know what I can do. I can't do anything. The only thing I can do, well, I guess this is what I can do now that I'm older and here. We can talk about it. Right. But just think that's just so crazy that people live through this. Like, if you knew that happened in your community, where some people from another country that don't speak your language, and they come in here, break into your neighbor's house, grab their kid, and shoot him right there in the head for nothing, no reason.
So there's occasionally, Palestinians lash out violently. Okay, they shouldn't. I think in the end it hurts their cause. But
The
let's be
amount of
honest. If it was us, I might do it. You might do it. You just push to the
100%.
point of the breaking.
100%. If they did that to your kid or anything like that,
Right.
People need to have some empathy, try to understand
Yeah.
what's going on.
Right.
But then it's also just often we say things are nuanced, that everything's black
Yeah.
and white, and everyone likes to say that with the Middle East. Oh, it's complex. It's like actually, this is the most unnuanced conflict we have. This is a really black and white thing.
Yeah.
Right. These people are living here. This is their land. They've been here for hundreds, thousands of years, some of them, generations back.
Yeah.
And this is their territory recognized by all lines. We're not even talking about the 1967 Green Line or the Nakba, anything. We're talking about West Bank, Palestinian territories. That this happens to them. That they have these soldiers come in and terrorize them, make life difficult. Settlers coming in, killing people, whatever, stealing your homes. And everyone's like, oh, it's complicated. That's not complicated.
Yeah, no,
that's
I agree.
just wrong.
Right.
It's just wrong.
I've heard that, and maybe I even believed that one time a long time ago. But it's not complicated. Saying things are complicated, that sounds sophisticated. It
means you're intellectually lazy.
Yeah, right.
And that's what
exactly.
It means.
Investigate, you find out it's not complicated. It is black and white, but it's the other way around. That's one thing that I learned. I think I fully woke up. I woke up to that fact about Palestine, a good probably 25, 30 years ago or something. But I still had this sense that, like, by and large, the U.S. was on the right side of all kinds of conflicts. And it was actually the Georgian War that really opened my eyes, because it was something that, first of all, your brother, lived in Georgia. And ahead of time, he said, the Georgian president is crazy. He's going to start a war. And he came back and he did start a war. And we were watching it in real time. Your brother knows both Russian and Georgian, and he was reading things and in real time, observing, and it was just clear that this was an attack by the Georgians. And then I was, turning on the TV or whatever, going to mainstream news sources, and Russia invades Georgia, and say, wait a second. I mean, Georgia actually attacked, the killed Russian peacekeepers, attempted to wrest this territory away, and Abkhazia and
Ossetia.
Yeah, and Ossetia, South Ossetia. And so I was just really struck. Wait a second. I mean, this isn't like they're kind of giving it a spin or whatever. No, they simply are suppressing one side and spreading lies on the other side. It's
it's so easy to do.
Right. That's something that after that I began to realize that, okay, yeah, sometimes it's like I became very suspicious of all mainstream media. I just said, okay, it's not that they sometimes just spin it or they're kind of emphasizing one side or the other. Sometimes it's black and white, but they flipped it. They're purveying the lies and suppressing the truth, and that's what I found. That more often than not, not always, but more often than not, that's the case when it comes to geopolitics.
Right. Yeah, and the problem is that people they don't have the time to really understand these issues, but everybody wants to develop a very strong opinion on them very quickly.
Right.
And I'm at fault for that too. It's easy to get a reaction, and if you're, and that's why it's important to have a mainstream media that you trust, because they're supposed to be your eyes and ears. So I can kind of look at a headline and kind of just gauge, like, oh, this is what's happening in the world, because nobody has the mental capacity or the time to understand every conflict in its totality. So this is why we're in such a mess. That how can we get mainstream media or to be reliable again? Like, without it, we're just going to be we're in this sort of stage of chaos where people have to go out and float and find their own sources. But who knows if they land on something that's actually true? They may even go further off into the deep end.
Right,
There's no real grounding force here. We have people that people respect, understand, other people demonize. If you have Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan or whatever are replacing mainstream media in some extent, but I still think you need to have
and a healthy society, what you have, right? Yeah,
right. Yeah.
And
can we recreate that?
It's just another institution that's been hollowed out, like we were saying at the beginning. Another institution that's been corrupted, and that's our media.
I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna
Yeah,
do about it, Dad.
yeah, no, it's rough. I mean, it'll have to be built up again, but I just don't. Again, I think it's you can see it happening at the edges, like we say. Like trust in the media is at an all-time low, but there's still way too many people, including influential people, the people that actually run the country, that still trust the mainstream media.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm going to maybe just mention one other thing about my experience in the West Bank, and then maybe you can share something from your experience. I think that's kind of interesting. I don't think I've actually really, even though we've both been to Israel and Palestine, I don't think we've actually really talked to about it that much in person, because I've been living in China for so long, and it's not usually like dinner conversation you have. Just one last thing I just want to say is when I was there in the West Bank is I noticed and it was pointed out to me that all water is scarce in the West Bank, and so they have these water towers on the roofs of most buildings, but they're constantly, you can see there's always these patch jobs because the settlers are always shooting their water towers to make sure that they don't have enough water, and that's just something that's just another example of constant sabotage to make life as miserable as possible. And another thing that the IDF has been given orders to do within the West Bank is to, if you're not directly arresting or killing people, then you need to make life as miserable as possible for the Palestinians in hopes that they'll leave. And I saw a direct example of that when I was with my grandma, your mother. She went to get me buy a kifa for me, the Palestinian kifa, at this little Palestinian vendor. While she's in the store, the IDF soldiers saw that this little vendor was doing some commerce with us, came in, shoved grandma into the store, and then closed the store up and started berating the shop owner, and the shop owner is just trying to say, I'm just, they won't even let do business, it was crazy. I'm like, hey, that's my grandma. She's old. You can't be pushing her into the store, and she's a white woman. She's like, what are you doing? I just wish people understood what's going on. They go there. So many Christians are just like, oh, we got to go there and help them. Like, go there. See how they treat Christians. See how they treat anybody that's non-Jewish.
Right. Well, I think that's something that's really important to understand. It's just the daily harassment, the daily humiliation. That never makes the news. But those things happen every day, just about everywhere, on the West Bank. These people, if they ever want to go anywhere, I remember the checkpoints. They were like, they looked like cattle slaughterhouse chutes. They have to go through, and you see these big bars. We didn't have to go through them, but they look like a caged people, and that's just, figuratively, that's what they are, and they have to endure this humiliation daily, traveling within what's supposed to be their own land. I mean, not going into Israel, but from one part of the West Bank to another.
Or even from one side of the city to the other. They'll build these walls directly through the city to try to make it as inconvenient as possible. So what used to take you maybe a 2-minute commute, now might take you 2 hours because they make you go all the way around through these checkpoints just to get to the other side of the town.
Right. Yeah. No, there was, I guess, I'll just mention a couple of things. I remember one house. It was actually just an individual house that was almost entirely encircled by the wall. Now, this wall is massive. It's 10 meters high and 3 meters thick or something. And it looks very much like what it is. It's like the sort of wall that encircles the prison. And it just went around this one house. They went to great effort just to go around that one house. And, there's this little gap on one side, but on 3 sides, or maybe even more than 3 sides, they're enclosed by this house. Now they look out their windows, and all they can see is this prison wall. They used to have a view that it was actually part of Bethlehem. They used to be able to see the olive groves on the slope on the other side of the valley, but now that's what they see. And I think it's kind of it's a very fitting metaphor for the experience of all Palestinians now. And then there was a city, I think it was called Kalkia. And the city itself was just like this one house. It was almost entirely enclosed by that wall. It's just they made it. It was about, a circle is 360 degrees. It was probably 320 degrees of that 360 was the wall. and again, just enclosed, again, there's it's a city that's, you look at, well, I living in my city, but I'm not free. I go to the edge of my city, there's a prison wall. I leave it, there's a checkpoint. Yeah, I mean, that's those are two minor examples, but I think it just kind of drives home the experience of all Palestinians.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, think about Americans, I get enraged when somebody cuts me off. Just driving, to the grocery store. I'm like, oh man, I'm ready to mess somebody up. Think about how these people feel every single day.
Actually, since I mentioned the wall, I think it's important. I think a lot of people think, okay, well, what's wrong with the wall on an international boundary? Like Trump said he was going to build a wall, but that's not what this wall is about. Very little of it is actually on anything that could be an international boundary. It's not the green line,
Right. It's not to demarcate.
It goes deep into Palestinian territory and winds around and goes around people's houses, cuts people off from, their what used to be their farmland, or olive groves, encircles the city, and it very purposely just divides and makes life difficult for the Palestinian. That's what the wall is about.
Well, let's see if Israel invades Lebanon and then things change. I mean, 700,000 settlers. What we're talking about is going to be this is going to end. There's no way this is going to end peacefully. I just don't see it.
I don't. Those people are not. There are too many of those. Some of those, like we say, are just people looking for, want to enjoy the subsidy or whatever. Those kind of people want to say, this isn't working out. Let's just get the hell out of here.
Yeah,
maybe. But there are too many of them are the fanatics, and they're gonna fight to the end. And it's going to be. There's no peaceful two-state solution. I'm sorry. I understand. There was a chance for it, maybe 25, 30 years ago, but that's gone. It's just gone. It's been gone for a long time, and it's just beyond gone at this point.
Well, it feels like we're building up to a huge bloodletting in the Middle East. That's just what, we keep on talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's happening already in Gaza. Gaza, terrible bloodletting. But I think
the West Bank.
You never know. There could be, who knows? But it's. I say that all the signs are still pointing that way, and it could be very well be in the next few weeks. If certainly in the next few months. I would say the odds are better than 50% that it's going to, happen like within the next few months. It seems like an optimal time for Israel to strike. I think, as you pointed out, first of all, it's the summer months. That's when the skies are clear and the Israelis can take advantage of their strength in the air. But then also, we're going to have Biden is on his way out. It looks like it's going to be Trump. You have a lame duck president. I think it's someone said
that's the
lamest of lame ducks, right? So it's going to be a very, very weak president who probably wasn't going to do anything to stop you anyway. This may be the optimal time for Netanyahu to strike.
Right. Well, Netanyahu is in the U.S. now. He should be. I believe he's in the U.S. now. He's going to be talking to Congress today. So yeah, he's got to be there. I feel like maybe he's just going to be trying to seek assurances from Biden and Kamala. He said he's going to talk to them in private, and then he's going to go visit Trump, I believe, on Friday.
Yeah.
I think he's just trying to shore up his position and maybe tell them, let them know that this is what's happening, and
we're going to do it.
And this is election year, Kamala. If you want any chance of winning this election, you want this money.
Right.
If you're in power, you Biden, and if you're still around, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
If you want the Democrats to hold a seat, hold on to power, do it. And then he's going to go over to Trump and get assurances as well, and say look, you're going to win this, Trump. But, if you want any help or support, to make sure you got it in the bag, you got to be supporting Israel. So I think this is what it is. He's going to be kind of prepping it up. And there's a lot of things that are just pointing to potentially even something even larger. And like you said, we got the lamest of lame duck presidents that might be trying to do whatever he can to salvage his legacy. Who knows if this could break off into something larger with Iran? I almost feel like the fact that they had a breaking news story after the assassination to say that, Iran was trying to assassinate the president. It didn't have to do with crooks, but Iran is obviously involved. I think that was in some way.
A plant, right? That could have
So
probably came from Assad.
This is my theory. It's a conspiracy theory. It's just conjecture, but I feel like the idea was to assassinate Trump and to have pull off and then blame it on the Iranians and to start a war with Iran. That's what that's what makes it. Why else would he come up with this whole Iran assassination plot afterwards? Like, we got to make sure.
I think they saw it. Actually, it was an optimal time. Maybe it was something they were going to plant anyway. I mean, there's constant, just like there's sort of a constant misinformation, slander being generated against Russia, but also against Iran. I mean, this has been going on for decades. And I think they probably saw, well, let's strike when everybody's up in arms about this attempted assassination. Let's get them thinking about Iran. And I think that's all there is to it. I still am unconvinced by the conspiracy theory. I'll have to see something really solid. I still go with just the, breathtaking incompetence theory.
I used to think you were a smart dad. I don't know. Okay. Well, is there anything else that we want to cover or wrap up before we call it a day here?
Well, no, I think we covered a lot. I think maybe next time we can talk more about Ukraine, but I think we did enough here.
All right. Well, you are traveling to Portugal today, and then you'll be making your way over to Moscow before too long. Right. The schedule might get a little bit rocky here in the next next week or so. So we'll just work around your schedule, and we'll enjoy your trip. Have a good flight.
I don't know what's going to happen in Portugal. I might not be able to do a show from there, but definitely once I get set up in Moscow, we can make it a regular thing again.
Yeah,
I'll do my best. We'll try to. I'm sure we'll be able to work something out over the next few days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I think we will be. We'll just say that. I don't know what's waiting for me there.
Yeah. Don't think you'll be able to make it because you're going to be 2 bottles deep into port or 2 bottles of
all those
port wine.
All those.
Enjoy some port.
No, I'm looking forward to that.
It's good. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, great. Next podcast will hopefully be from Portugal then. So,
all right.
Looking forward to hearing what it's like. All right.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.